So there is nothing random about crime. It's always the same modus operandi in the same area at the same hour against unaware people that doesn't know how the criminals operate and that about that modus operandi.
Welcome to the Bold Agent Podcast. Join me as I chat with some of the top leaders in residential real estate. We'll talk about marketing, AI, investing, and other topics to help you grow your agent business.
So we'll kick it off, episode 2. I'm really pleased to welcome you, Nadim Curi, the CEO of Crimeometer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Chris. Great to be here, and thank you for having me.
All right, excellent. Well, one of the things that we love at Bold Street is data, and you guys have an amazing data set and what you've compiled with it. And I'd love to talk about crime data and its impact to residential real estate in particular. But why don't we just take a step back? Like, how did you get into crime data? Like, how did you become a crime data geek?
Yeah, so let's talk about the problem. Basically, let's start there. So the problem we're addressing is that crime data and public safety information is fragmented, is scattered all around, and there is no source today where you can go to, at least, a single source when you can rely to and understand, what's the safety of a given area at a particular moment. And criminals are taking advantage of that, basically. So how criminals operate are they have a modus operandi, in a given area, in a given location, at a specific time of the day. And it's the totally opposite of what one could believe. So there is nothing random about crime. It's always the same modus operandi in the same area at the same hour against unaware people that doesn't know how the criminals operate and that about that modus operandi. So it's always the same. It's a pattern that they have, and they know they do that because the risk is low when they have this, the same modus operandi, and they take advantage of the total lack of information. So once the solution for this is basically, and we are convinced about that, is that the exposure, once the criminal are exposed and the modus operandi is exposed. So in this block, in this street, you have a lot of car break-ins, or a lot of burglaries, or a lot of assaults, and the media in some cases do a lot about that, just exposing them and providing this information to the public. The criminal will basically have two options: or to change the modus operandi in that location, or to move to another location to do the same. And in both cases, the risk is increased, for them to getting caught by the police, basically. So that's why we are so convinced, that this is the way to address this massive problem with, crime and safety, a very, very, big and complex problem to solve. But we are convinced that this is the way, to providing this information in a timely manner and as easily as possible to be accessible, universally accessible to all of us, all people and companies and everyone.
Great. So you increase the awareness, it increases the risk for criminals, decreases the amount of crime. So
in summary, yeah.
Right.
It makes also the job for the police easier as well. Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, and then, I think in more recent times, we have more and more access to data that wasn't so easily accessible before. And so, I've seen your maps on Crimeometer really highlight kind of the different areas and what's happening with crime. Well, how did, Nadim, so you went from, being into crime data, how did you then, get into creating a whole business around this? Like, what motivated you to really want to start a business?
So again, actually, we started this with a consumer app that was, called City Cop, basically, where it was like a ways against crime, where any person can download the app. It was like a ways against crime, so you can download the app and basically report different types of crimes in your neighborhood, in your area, and with that, send alerts to other users, other people doing the same in your area. But the challenge was basically to find a business model around that, to make this, a business, because it was very, very difficult to something to sustain. And at the end, we realized that this problem is not only for people, but also for companies, so we created a business model around this to provide this standardized, public safety information, and to be this single source of public safety information that it doesn't exist today. So we're working to be us, this global standard for public safety. And when people think about, public safety, think about, Crimeometer as this single source for public safety information and standardized crime data. So we can provide this information not only for people, but also for companies. Insurance, real estate, travel, transportation, different industries that all having, the same problem and issues.
Okay, great. And I know a lot of folks, especially our listeners, use crime data, especially around valuation for homes. Can you talk a little bit around the impact of crime and residential real estate? How do those two kind of go together, and what's your impact, and what do your customers use it for, who are maybe real estate investors, and what do you see there?
Yeah, so real estate investors or any individual, looking to buy a home, basically will want to know around the price, if this is a good investment of the specific, property, if the price will go up or down in the future. So, and crime, of course, will affect that. Crime affects the pricing, also will affect the insurance on that property. So that's also why crime data is important, for real estate and insurance. One aspect is to try to predict the price and the value of that particular location in now and into the future, basically. So that's a very useful piece of information to understand and to consider in these predictions.
And I've seen you have a crime score index. Can you talk a little bit around that? Because I know that not a lot of folks, myself included, when I first looked at it, I had to really look into how does that crime score index, what's it made of, and what's it actually mean? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So crime safety index is a concept. We calculate that basically to provide a single value. In our case is between 0 and 100, being 50 the national average. So it will help anyone to understand, with that number, how safe, a given area is. Because if I tell you, okay, there has been, like 10 assaults or 9 burglaries in this area in the past week, you don't really know if that's okay. Is that a lot or not? Like, what does it mean? So with the crime safety index, you can have in just a single number an easy way to understand, the safety. So if it is, below 50, will be below national average. Above 50 will be above national average. So you can use that to compare also across different locations. You have a 30 here, a 40 here, a 50, so you can compare.
And what types of data goes into creating that index, and how do you calculate that?
Well, there are could be many different methodologies. In our case, it will be we will consider the total crimes in that area, the severity of those crimes. We will weight different crimes according to the severity or the violence, and also we will consider the population. So the population on the area will normalize that value, the final value. So with those inputs, variables, we calculate that number.
And what do you take into account? I imagine with FBI, you probably got all the way up to national stuff like FBI, all the way down to kind of local cities and counties. How are you pulling all of that data together?
So in our case, we are focusing on aggregating and standardizing the individual crime incidents from police departments across the US. So the granularity is almost the best we can have, because we have the individual crime incidents that are being shared publicly available from the police departments. So we use those crime incidents in a given area to calculate the crime safety index real time, considering the input parameters from the user or the company using our service. So we basically will receive a location, like a coordinates or an address, a range of dates, and a distance in miles. For instance, like 1 mile, 2 miles, half a mile, whatever you want. And considering those parameters, we will calculate real time the crime safety index, considering the individual crime incidents in that area and the methodology that I mentioned,
And when you're mentioning a little bit, so is it more based on a radius, or is it more like a census block that you're kind of calculating scores for?
In our case, currently, it's basically on a radius level. Yeah.
Radius. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And are you tracking, or do you see changes in crime? Are you able to say, okay, well, this is a 50 in your index, but based on what we've seen over the past, we actually think this is trending up or this is trending down. Do you see those types of trends?
Yes, that you can see that, because we provide this with a lot of flexibility. So because we receive the range of dates that you want to analyze, basically, the person or the company doing this analysis can extract those conclusions, because you can take, okay, give me last month or last week, and you can compare, between different months or different weeks.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And see how it goes. Okay, interesting. And I imagine it's quite a job to pull together. You mentioned a little bit standardization. You're having to standardize data across, cities and counties all across the US. Is that right?
Yeah. That's a big part of the value that we're providing. Again, the problem is the information is scattered, it's fragmented. So the most of the value that we are currently providing is that process, of standardization and transformations to provide basically the same output for any given location. For San Francisco, New York, Chicago, or anyone across we are currently covering more than 700 plus locations across the US. You will get exactly the same output for every location, through our service that is an API, basically.
Great.
We're doing that.
Great. Yeah. And I know, from working with the real estate investors, being one myself, working with, agents that serve them, crime actually impacts residential real estate in multiple different areas. You were talking about kind of house valuations, to insurance, to the amounts of rent you can charge, and property damage, squatters, the B&E kind of stuff that goes on has a huge impact. And so, I know that can kind of offset cap rates. So say you got, different cap rates compared to different crime scores, you got different thresholds. You might get a higher cap rate, but if it's got a higher crime score, there's a lot more risk involved. So, crime actually is a really important data point when going into residential investing.
Yeah.
How do you see? Are you seeing anything like the impact of AI going into crime or anything like that? How does AI, the latest things that have been happening with AI, impact?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we have been playing around with AI for quite a bit now, but it's also being used for several years now. By police departments, for instance, are using this again since several years back, where there is the predictive policing concept that they use artificial intelligence or some sort of prediction in in the use of public safety information and crime data to predict, crime behavior, basically. So, and again, as I mentioned, with the problem when we started, the criminals have it's almost a mathematical way, to proceed, and it's very, very predictable, So you can, using all of this information, you can predict, in the next week, during these days, during these hours of the days, you will have on Mondays at 2 p.m. in this location, you will have a 60% chance of an assault, going on, or a burglary happening, because again, it's always the same modus operandi. So police departments use that information to basically know how to proceed, and with the scarce resources that they have, how to deploy, the patrols, or how to handle these scarce resources that they have, and to try to mitigate crime, because police presence, for instance, will probably mitigate crime. So will, if they have I don't know, like a number, like let's say more than 60% or 70% of chance of something happening in a given location, they will maybe send a patrol car at that given time of the day in that location, and with that drive crime down, basically. And that's a proven concept so far. So artificial intelligence, of course, will make this exponentially better, because what we have seen, with the huge amount of informations that we have today, these type of algorithms can predict even better what's could happen. So we have been using that as well, and it works, again, because it's a mathematical almost way how crime operates. So we are convinced that this is, the future, ideally in the future. And there is some science fiction movies around this, like Minority Report, with Tom Cruise, like getting into the place before the crime even happening. That's currently almost, happening today, and it could even improve into the future. And that's the future, what we have seen.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I think from the individual's perspective, when a crime happens to somebody, it just feels like bad luck, or it feels like, a chance. But kind of, I think what you're indicating is actually when crime operates according to some actual rules, like you were saying, everybody's got an MO, a modus operandi around that. And it's actually to geographic areas. And that actually starts to make it predictive, and then you can take responses based on that.
Yeah, it's actually the opposite to bad luck. Basically, it's that you will see the data. Okay, I got my car, car break-in here in this street, and I will go and open, our app or City Cop or the service with the data that we provided. You will see, okay, there were like 20 car break-ins in the last couple of days here. So of course, and also the challenge here is that this modus operandi is at a street level. It's not like an entire neighborhood that you need to avoid. It's like a specific street level. So when you look at the data, you will see a specific street. Okay, so car break-in is going on, and you move a block away, and that would totally change to like burglaries or assaults, or maybe nothing, because there is something also in the modus operandi that is a specific, street level. So that's also the challenge, how to understand what's going on at a particular location at a particular, time of the day. So a given street will be totally safe until 8 p.m. Maybe after 8 p.m. is very, very dangerous. So that's the big challenge,
Great. Yeah. We talk, so, I know we talk at Bold Street a lot about how residential real estate is hyper local. And I love what you're saying. It's all the way, crime is all the way down to a very specific street level and street block And using cool data tools like Crimeometer, you can actually see that stuff and get ahead of it when either so that you're understanding if you're buying a house or you own a house in a particular area or an investment property, you actually can know really granularly what the likelihood of very specific crimes are around that neighborhood. Right.
Yeah.
Well, so you've talked a bunch around why you started Crimeometer. Maybe just give us a broad view of kind of what Crimeometer does, and how do you see Crimeometer kind of impact going into the future, and what do you guys want to be kind of doing?
Yeah, our mission is to democratize access to crime data and public safety information, and making it universally accessible and useful, for people and companies, and that's also our vision here, is to be this main source of information for public safety in the world. Like, again, today there is nothing, so you don't know where to go. In some cases, that some police department may be sharing information, so you need to go to the police department website and see, how they are sharing the information, and it's really, painful and hard, to get this information in a timely and useful manner. So that's what we're doing, making this much more accessible and useful. And that's what we're doing. We build an API currently. Our service is an API where you can get access to this standardized crime data very, very easily, very, very straightforward. And again, you will get basically the same output or user experience for any of these different locations that we're currently covering. And that's an ongoing process that we're still, adding locations and more locations as police departments share information, because not all police departments currently are sharing, information, sadly, but because there is no like a legal requirement currently for police departments to share this information. But we understand that this is the future, and as we move on, more and more police departments will be sharing this information. So, and our job will always be to get as much data and as much sources as we can to make this as useful as possible.
Great, I love that. And so you talked a little around kind of the legal system and politics and kind of legislation. Do you see anything moving forward in kind of the political realm or legislative around creating more requirements for police departments to open up the data to be able to provide this type of access?
Yeah, so actually the FBI has a standard that we are using. It's called the NIBERS standard, the National Incident Based Reporting System, where they have the different type of crimes, how they should be categorized. Because a challenge is that a police department will say, an assault will be they will use some terminology different from other police departments, and that's also a challenge. Okay, we need to speak the same language here, basically. So we took that standard from the FBI to also standardize all the different type of crimes, across the different police departments, and that's a step forward, in standardization and to everyone speaking the same language, basically. So that's something that we are already doing.
Very cool. Okay, awesome. So yeah, we got a lot. So as we kind of go further into the future, we'll see more openness around data, and that allows us to be able to be predictive around how we react to crime, and how police departments can actually proactively police based on crime probability in particular areas. That's really interesting, the minority report effect.
Yeah.
So I guess the last thing is, do you have, if you had any advice to, real estate investors, real estate, agents, what would be like one piece of advice that you could give around how to use maybe crime data or running a business, or, whatever you think?
Yeah, my advice, and why I think it's the most valuable of this, type of podcast, is just to for people to know about how crime operates, and again the common sense and what everyone almost believes is that, it's just, bad luck or bad timing, and it's totally the opposite. So I will try to, to put the word out there that it's almost the same that is happening in a given area, and this data is available. So I should consider this data in any decision making that I will need to make, because it is there, it is accessible. We're making it even more accessible and more useful. So it's very, very easy to, at least for us to get this information and make a better decision. So we encourage everyone to just check out our website, what things that we're doing. We have many different products to provide, and this should be very, very easy for everyone to get this information.
Okay, awesome. Well, we, Bold Street integrates with Crimeometer. We'll put some links in podcasts, so anybody wants to check out the application, love, you guys should definitely check it out. And Nadim, this was great. Thank you for the deep dive into crime data and its impact to residential real estate, and actually really interesting to hear around how predictable crime can be and getting ahead of that. So really interesting stuff, fascinating. So love chatting with you around this stuff and geeking out on data. So yeah, so thanks for joining, and thanks for all your insights.
Likewise, Chris, was great, being here, and yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk about this and making this information as easily accessible as possible, for everyone. Great. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, this was another episode of the Bold Agent Podcast. Hope you learned something new today. If you did, hit that subscribe button. Until next time, be bold.